I spent 2 years planning my dream wedding, using every professional favor I had to secure the venue. Then my mother texted, "Cancel your date. Caleb needs it for his engagement party." I refused, so she launched a war, but she forgot I hold the contracts. Before we continue today's story, we have an urgent announcement to make. Due to technical issues, we are pivoting towards another channel. Please subscribe to our new channel, Inherited Revenge. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The vibration of my phone against the mahogany desk was the only sound in my office, but it felt like an earthquake. I was sitting in the semi-darkness of the event suite, the glow of my dual monitors illuminating a spreadsheet that represented 24 months of meticulous, agonizing labor. It was late, past 8 in the evening, and the office was empty save for the janitorial staff humming softly in the hallway. I shouldn't have been there. I should have been at home with Logan, drinking the Pinot Noir we had opened to celebrate the final vendor confirmation. But I was a perfectionist. It was both my superpower and my curse. As a senior event coordinator for one of the city's most prestigious hospitality groups, I knew exactly how many things could go wrong between a yes and an I do. I had spent my entire adult life fixing other people's disasters, smoothing over ruffled feathers, and making miracles happen on a shoestring budget. This time, however, the miracle was for me. I picked up the phone, expecting a text from Logan asking when I'd be home. Instead, the name on the screen made my stomach tighten in that familiar, conditioned reflex I had developed over 29 years. "Mom." I swiped the screen open. The message was short, it was casual, it was devastating. "Your brother scheduled his engagement party. It's going to be on the 14th. You'll need to move your wedding date. We need the venue." I stared at the words. I blinked, sure that my tired eyes were misinterpreting the syntax. I read it again. "You'll need to move your wedding date." Not a question, not a request, a command. My wedding was on the 14th. October 14th. The date wasn't just a square on a calendar, it was a fortress I had built. I had secured the sprawling, impossible-to-book estate where I worked, the Halloway Gardens, on the peak weekend of the season. I had pulled every string, called in every favor, and leveraged 5 years of unpaid overtime to get that date. Caleb, my younger brother, had been dating his girlfriend for exactly 3 months. I wasn't even sure if I knew her last name. I felt a cold sweat prickle at the back of my neck. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't type a reply immediately. I couldn't. The sheer audacity of the demand was so large, so encompassing, that it didn't register as reality. It felt like a joke, a prank. I typed back, my thumbs shaking slightly. "Mom, that's my wedding day. We've had this booked for 2 years. Caleb can pick literally any other day." The 3 dots of her typing bubble appeared instantly. She had been waiting. "Don't be selfish, Serenity. Caleb's fiancé comes from a very important family. They need to make a splash now, while the excitement is high. You've been engaged forever. You can wait another 6 months. The 14th is the only date that works for them." I dropped the phone on the desk. It clattered loudly, the sound echoing in the empty office. My breath was coming in short, shallow gasps. It wasn't just the request, it was the logic. You can wait. I had always waited. I had waited for attention, for praise, for resources, while Caleb had been ushered to the front of the line every single time. But this was my wedding. This was the one day that was supposed to be mine. I looked up at the vision board pinned to my office wall. Swatches of deep emerald fabric, photos of the Halloway weeping willows, the menu tasting notes Logan, and I had laughed over just last week. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sharp, twisting knot of betrayal that had nothing to do with venues or dates and everything to do with the woman who had birthed me. She wasn't asking me to change a date. She was telling me, for the 1,000th time, that my happiness was a currency she was willing to spend to buy Caleb a moment of glory. I whispered to the empty room, my voice cracking, Not this time. But as I stared at the darkening screen, I realized with a sinking horror that the betrayal was worse than the logistics. It wasn't just that she asked. It was that she had already decided. The drive home was a blur. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned the color of bone. The city lights smeared past my window, red streaks of taillights merging with the tears I refused to let fall. When I walked into our apartment, Logan was in the kitchen. The smell of garlic and roasting chicken hit me, a smell that usually signaled comfort and safety. He looked up, a smile forming on his face, but it died the second he saw me. "Ren," he put down the wooden spoon and crossed the room in 2 strides. "What happened? Did the florist cancel? I told you, we can handle the flowers ourselves if we have to." I shook my head, unable to speak. I just handed him my phone. He read the text messages. I watched his face transform. Logan was a patient man. He was an architect, methodical, calm, slow to anger. But as he read the exchange, his jaw set, and a vein in his temple began to pulse. "Is she serious?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "She's serious," I whispered, collapsing onto one of the kitchen stools. "She says Caleb needs the momentum. She says because I'm in the industry, I can easily reschedule." "Reschedule?" Logan laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "It's October, Serenity. You can't just reschedule a peak season wedding at Holloway Gardens. People book that place 5 years out. You only got it because you essentially run the place." "She knows that," I said, putting my head in my hands. "She just doesn't care. She assumes I'll fix it. That's what I do. I fix things." "Not this," Logan said firmly. He stepped closer and wrapped his arms around me, pulling me into his chest. "You are not fixing this for them. You are not moving our date." "If I don't," I mumbled into his shirt, "she's going to make it hell. You know she will." "Let her," Logan said. "We don't need them there." But it wasn't that simple. In my family, you didn't just say no to Patricia. A refusal was treated as an act of war. The next morning, the assault began. It started with a phone call at 6:00 a.m. I was awake, staring at the ceiling when the phone buzzed. "Serenity," my mother's voice chirped, deceptively bright. "I assumed you've had the night to calm down and look at the calendar. Caleb and I were looking at the guest list, and we realized that if we use the Holloway Ballroom, we can fit 300 people. It's perfect." "Mom," I said, my voice raspy from lack of sleep, "I am not canceling my wedding. I have vendors booked. I have deposits down. Logan's family has flights booked." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Logan's parents are retired. They can fly anytime. And the deposits? You're the event coordinator. Just wave your magic wand. Tell them it was a clerical error." "It's not a clerical error." I sat up, clutching the duvet. "It's my life. Why can't Caleb do it the week after, or literally anywhere else?" "Because," she said, her tone dropping, becoming icy and sharp. "The 14th is the date the astrologer gave his fiancée. It's auspicious. And they want Holloway because you work there, which means we get the family rate. We can't afford Holloway at full price, Serenity. You know that. We need your discount." There it was, the naked truth. "So you want me to cancel my wedding," I said slowly, "so that Caleb can use my employee discount for a party for a girl he just met." "He loves her," Mom snapped, "and we want to welcome her properly. Why are you being so difficult? You've always been jealous of him ever since you were kids. It's unbecoming." I closed my eyes. Jealous. That was her favorite weapon. If I complained that Caleb broke my toys, I was jealous. If I pointed out that he got a car for his 16th birthday while I got a bus pass, I was ungrateful and jealous. "I'm not changing the date, Mom," I said, striving for a calmness I didn't feel. "If Caleb wants Holloway on the 14th, he can't have it. It's taken." "If you don't give him this date," she said, and the venom in her voice was palpable, "then don't expect us at your wedding whenever you do decide to have it. And don't expect your aunts and uncles either. I'll make sure everyone knows how selfish you're being, refusing to help your brother start his new life." She hung up. I sat there in the silence, the threat hanging in the air like smoke. She would do it. She would launch a smear campaign so vicious that by the time my wedding rolled around, I'd be the pariah of the family. I looked over at Logan, who was still sleeping, his chest rising and falling rhythmically. He was right. I shouldn't give in. But as I looked at the calendar on my nightstand, a strange thought occurred to me. A memory of the contracts I had signed. Mom assumed that because I was the daughter, I would fold. She assumed that because I was the sister, I would sacrifice. She assumed that because I was the employee, the venue belonged to me to give away. She thought she held all the cards because she controlled the family's affection. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. I reached for my work laptop and opened the secure file labeled Wedding Contracts Internal. I scrolled down to the terms and conditions, the specific clauses I had written. Myself for employee bookings. A small, cold smile touched my lips. They wanted the date, they wanted the venue. They wanted the magic wand I waved to make things cheap and perfect. "Okay, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "You can have the date." To understand why my mother's demand wasn't just rude, but deeply, historically painful, you have to understand Caleb. Caleb was the miracle baby. I was 3 when he was born, and from the moment he arrived, the sun simply shone brighter on him. He was charming, I'll give him that. He had a crooked smile that could get him out of a parking ticket and a laugh that made people want to be near him. But beneath that charm was a hollowness that my mother had frantically tried to fill with money, praise, and my dignity. When we were teenagers, if Caleb crashed the car, it was because the brakes were touchy, and I was assigned to drive him to school for a month. When he failed a class, it was the teacher's fault, and I was tutored on how to take notes for him. I had spent my 20s trying to buy my mother's approval with competence. I became the successful one, the organized one, the one who remembered birthdays, who planned the anniversary parties, who bailoed Caleb out of debt twice without telling Dad. I thought that if I was perfect enough, if I was useful enough, she would finally look at me with the same adoration she turned on Caleb. It never worked. My success was expected, his bare minimum was celebrated. And now there was Tiffany. I met Tiffany for the first time 2 days after the phone call. I had agreed to discuss the logistics, a phrase that my mother took as a surrender. We met for lunch at a bistro downtown, Mom, Caleb, and the new fiancé. Tiffany was polished. That was the word. She was 22, 4 years younger than Caleb, and she looked like she had been generated by an AI instructed to create old money influencer. Her hair was a blinding shade of blonde, her handbag cost more than my car, and she didn't look at the waiter when she ordered. "So," Tiffany said, taking a sip of her sparkling water, "Patricia says you're going to step aside. That's so sweet of you. Honestly, I told Caleb, I simply cannot wait until spring. The stars are aligned for October. It's a power month for us." I looked at Caleb. He was checking his watch, looking bored. He didn't look like a man madly in love. He looked like a man who had found a woman who would bankroll his lifestyle better than his mother could. "Caleb," I said, keeping my voice neutral, "do you realize that October 14th is my wedding day? That Logan and I have deposits down." Caleb shrugged, tearing a piece of bread. "Come on, Serenity. You guys have been together for like 5 years. What's another few months? Tiffany's dad is looking to invest in my startup, but he wants to see that we're serious and have family backing. This party is a networking event as much as an engagement. We need the Halloway. It impresses people." "And the discount?" I asked. "You need that too." "Well, obviously," Caleb laughed, his mouth full. "Mom said you get 80% off the venue fee and catering at cost. We DB idiots not to use that. Why pay 40 grand when we can pay 5? I looked at my mother. Patricia was beaming at them, her eyes crinkling with a warmth I had starved for my entire life. "See," Patricia said, reaching over to pat Tiffany's hand. "It all works out. Serenity is very good at logistics. She'll handle the vendor swaps. You won't have to lift a finger, Tiffany. It will be Serenity's gift to the happy couple." Tiffany turned her gaze to me. It was a cold, assessing look. There was no gratitude in it, just the expectation of service. "Make sure the linens are silk," Tiffany said. "I'm allergic to polyester blends, and I want the champagne tower, the big one." "The champagne tower is an extra $3,000, I noted automatically. "Not with your discount," Tiffany corrected me, a smirk playing on her lips. "Patricia said you can comp things." I sat back in my chair. The waiter placed a salad in front of me, but I had lost my appetite. They didn't just want my date. They wanted my labor. They wanted me to work my own wedding date, serving them, erasing myself so they could shine on a budget that didn't exist without me. The antagonist wasn't just Caleb's selfishness or Tiffany's entitlement. It was my mother's absolute certainty that I was an accessory to Caleb's life. She was looking at me not as a bride, but as a staff member. "Fine," I said. The word tasted like ash. "Fine," Mom clapped her hands together. "Oh, wonderful, I knew you'd come around." "I'll cancel my booking," I said, my voice steady. "I'll pull my name off the 14th. The date will be open for you to book." "And you'll transfer the vendors?" Caleb asked. "The DJ, the florist?" "I'll release them," I said carefully. "I'll tell them the date is opening up and that you'll be taking it." "Perfect," Patricia said, raising her glass. "To Caleb and Tiffany, and to Serenity for finally knowing her place." Knowing her place. The phrase echoed in my head as I watched them toast. They clinked glasses, oblivious to the specific wording I had used. I said I would release the date. I said I would pull my name. I didn't say I would transfer the contract. I didn't say I would transfer the discount. They saw a sister who had finally been bullied into submission. They didn't see the event coordinator who knew that the Halloway, friends and family clause was strictly non-transferable, and that the cancellation policy for less than 90 days out was 100% of the estimated cost. I picked up my water glass and took a sip. "To family," I said. The morning after the lunch, I walked into my office at Halloway Gardens with a calmness that frightened me. Usually, the prospect of canceling an event, let alone my own wedding, would have sent me into a spiral of anxiety. But the numbness had been replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I sat down at my desk and logged into the venue's internal booking system, Event Horizon. The screen glowed blue, illuminating the calendar for October. There it was in bold, locked gold text: Halloway Ballroom and Gardens, reserved SVANCE staff. My finger hovered over the mouse. "Staff booking," I whispered to myself. "Discount code EMP90. I clicked modify, then cancel booking. A warning pop-up appeared. Cancellation within 90 days usually incurs a fee. As this is a staff event, manager override is required. I typed in my credentials, override authorized. With a final click, the gold block on October 14th vanished. The date turned a stark, empty white, available. It was done. I wasn't the bride anymore. I was just the venue manager. I didn't stop there. I picked up my office phone, not my cell, and dialed the number for Marco, our head of catering. Marco had been a friend for years. He'd promised me a custom 5-course menu for the cost of ingredients as a wedding gift. "Marco," I said when he picked up, keeping my voice professionally brisk. "It's Serenity. I need to update you on the 14th. "Serenity, Bella, I was just looking at the truffle order. We are good to go." "Actually, no," I said, leaning back in my chair. "I've had to cancel my booking. Family emergency." "Oh no, Serenity, I am so sorry." "It's okay," I interrupted, cutting off his sympathy before it could make me cry. "But here's the thing. The date is opening up. My brother, Caleb, is going to book it immediately for his engagement party. He's going to contact you for a menu." "Okay," Marco said, sounding confused. "So, same menu, I switch the name." "No," I said clearly. "Absolutely not the same menu, and absolutely not the same price. The friends and family discount is strictly for my wedding, Marco. If I'm not the bride, the discount is void. You quote him the standard rack rate for a Saturday night gala." And Marco. "Yes." He wants the champagne tower, the big one. I could practically hear Marco shrugging on the other end. Okay, boss, standard rates. It's a shame, though. I wanted to make that lamb for you. I know, I said, a lump forming in my throat. Thank you, Marco. I spent the next 2 hours making similar calls. I called Sarah, the florist who had promised me wholesale peonies. I called the lighting technicians who were going to throw in the uplighting for free. To each of them, I gave the same script. I am no longer the client. The new client is Caleb Vance. He is a standard inquiry. Please bill accordingly. By noon, I had dismantled a wedding that took 2 years to build. Then I started digging. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong about the rush. Momentum, Mom had said. Auspicious date. It felt thin. Caleb had never cared about astrology, and he certainly never cared about momentum unless it involved a sports car. I pulled up the dossier I had started on Tiffany's family. In the event planning world, you learn to research your clients to ensure they can actually pay the bill. I treated this no differently. Tiffany claimed to be an heiress to a logistics fortune. I searched the company name she had dropped at lunch. It existed, certainly. But when I pulled the public records and bankruptcy filings from the last fiscal year, a different picture emerged. The company was in Chapter 11. They were liquidating assets. I sat back, staring at the screen. Tiffany's family wasn't investing in Caleb's startup because they were rich. They were likely looking for a lifeboat. In Caleb, I logged into the shared family cloud account, a mistake my parents had never rectified since I set it up for them 5 years ago. I navigated to the shared documents folder where Dad kept tax returns and bank statements. I found a folder labeled Caleb Loan 2025. I opened it. It wasn't a small loan. My parents had co-signed a business loan for Caleb's tech venture. 6 months ago, the balance was $50,000. The payments were already late. The picture snapped into focus. Caleb was broke. Tiffany's family was broke. Both sides thought the other side was the cash cow. And my mother was pushing for this engagement party at Halloway Gardens to seal the deal, assuming I would foot the bill so they could look wealthy enough to fool each other. They were building a castle on a sinkhole, and they had just fired the only engineer who could have warned them. It took 3 days for the system to process the new inquiry. I was in a meeting with a corporate client when my cell phone began to buzz. I ignored it. It buzzed again, and again. Then the office line rang. My assistant, Jessica, poked her head in. "Serenity, it's your mother. She says it's an emergency. She's screaming." I apologized to the client, stepped out, and took the call at my desk. "Hello, Mother." "What is this?" Patricia shrieked. The sound was so loud I had to pull the receiver away from my ear. "What is this contract? Are you insane?" "I'm at work, Mom," I said calmly. "You'll have to be more specific." The quote from Halloway, it says $45,000. And that's just the rental fee and the catering minimum. "That sounds about right for a Saturday in October," I said, pulling up a spreadsheet on my screen just to have something to look at. "Actually, that's a bit low. Did they include the security deposit?" "Low, Serenity, are you stupid? You said you would handle it. You said you would transfer the vendors." "No," I corrected her, my voice turning steel hard. "I said I would release the date. I said I would release the vendors. I did exactly that. The date was open. You booked it. Now you have the standard contract." "But the discount," she sputtered. "The family rate, you work there." "The Employee Handbook, Section 4, Clause 2, I recited, having memorized it the night before. Employee discounts are non-transferable and apply strictly to events where the employee is the primary honoree and payer. I am not the honoree. I am not the payer. Therefore, no discount." You petty little," she trailed off, struggling for a word vile enough. "You did this on purpose. You're trying to ruin your brother's big day because you're jealous." "I'm following corporate policy," I said. "If I gave you that discount for an event I'm not hosting, it would be considered theft of services. I could lose my job. Are you asking me to lose my job for Caleb's party? There was a silence on the line, a heavy, suffocating silence. I knew what she was thinking. She was weighing my career against Caleb's happiness. Fix it, she hissed. I don't care how. Go to your boss. Tell him it's for us. We are not paying $45,000. We budgeted 5. Then you should have booked the community center, I said. I can't fix it, Mom. The contract is generated by the system. If you want the date, you have to sign and pay the deposit by Friday at 5:00 p.m. If you don't, the date opens up to the public, and the waiting list is 12 people long. Someone else will take it within an hour. We already sent the invitations, she screamed. Caleb sent the digital invites this morning. Everyone thinks it's at Halloway. Then I guess you'd better pay the deposit, I said. I have to go. I have real clients to tend to. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was adrenaline. That evening, Logan and I sat on our balcony. I had printed out the email confirmation of the cancellation of our wedding. So, Logan said, swirling his wine, they have the contract. They have the contract, I confirmed. And Mom is trying to bully me into committing fraud to lower it. Will she pay it? She doesn't have the money, I said. Dad's retirement is tied up. They're house-poor, and I found out today that Caleb is already in debt to them. So they'll cancel, Logan asked. No, I said, looking out at the city skyline. They can't. Tiffany thinks they're rich. If they cancel the Halloway party and move it to a Pizza Hut, the illusion shatters. Tiffany walks. The investment walks. Caleb is exposed. So they have to pay, Logan said, but they can't pay. Exactly, I said, which means they're going to try to make me pay. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text from Caleb. Sis, WTF, Mom is crying. Just sign the paper that says it's your party so we get the rate. Who cares? Nobody checks. Don't be a bitch. I showed the phone to Logan. He read it, his expression darkening. He calls you a bitch and asks for a $40,000 favor in the same text, Logan noted dryly. He's desperate, I said. He knows that without the discount, he's exposed. I didn't reply to Caleb. Instead, I blocked his number for the night. I needed to sleep, because I knew that tomorrow they would try to corner me in person. The ambush happened 2 days later. I arrived home from work to find my parents' car parked in my driveway. My stomach dropped. I had expected them to come to the office, where I had security, but they had come to my sanctuary. Logan wasn't home yet. He was at a site visit. It was just me. I walked up the steps, my keys in my hand, ready to turn around and leave, but the front door opened. Caleb was standing there. He had a key, an emergency key I had given my parents years ago. We need to talk, he said. He didn't look charming today. He looked sweaty and frantic. I walked in, leaving the door wide open. Get out of my house, I said calmly, and give me back my key. Mom and Dad were sitting on my sofa. Dad looked uncomfortable, staring at his shoes. Mom looked like a general on the battlefield. We're not leaving until this is resolved, Mom announced. She slapped a folder onto my coffee table. It was the Halloway contract. You are going to sign this as the guarantor. You are going to put the event under your name. No, I said, dropping my purse by the door. I am not. Serenity, please, Dad spoke up, his voice weary. Just help your brother. This is a lot of money. We can't swing it right now. The market is down. Then don't have the party at Halloway, I said, looking at my father. Dad, you taught me to live within my means. Why doesn't that apply to Caleb? Because this is an investment, Caleb shouted, pacing the room. Tiffany's dad is going to put $2 million into my app, but he needs to see we're legit. If we pull off this party, the money comes in and I can pay everyone back. I'll pay you back. I'll buy you a car. Whatever. You're 50 grand in debt, Caleb, I said quietly. The room went dead silent. Caleb froze. Mom's eyes widened. How do you know that? Caleb whispered. I saw the loan documents in the family cloud, I said. You haven't made a payment in 3 months. Does Tiffany know? Shut up, Caleb lunged toward me, his face red. You don't say a word to her, she thinks I'm liquid. So you're lying to her, I said, and you want me to subsidize the lie. It's not a lie, it's a strategy, Mom interjected, standing up to defend him. Serenity, you are jeopardizing his future. If he lands this deal, we are all set. Don't you want your brother to succeed? Not if it's based on fraud, I said. And here's the other thing. I looked into Tiffany's family, too. Her dad's company is in Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They're liquidating. Caleb stopped pacing. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open. What? They're broke, Caleb, I said, feeling a strange mix of pity and vindication. They're not investing $2 million. They're probably hoping you bail them out. You're two drowning people trying to use each other as a life raft. You're lying, Caleb spat. You're just jealous. You're trying to sabotage me. Check the public records, I shrugged. Or don't. It doesn't change my answer. I am not signing that contract. I am not giving you my discount. And if you don't get out of my house in the next 2 minutes, I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare, Mom sneered. We're your family. I have neighbors who watch everything, I said. Try me. They left. But as they walked out, Mom turned back, her face twisted in a look of pure hatred I will never forget. You are selfish, she hissed. If this party fails, it is entirely your fault. You are dead to us. The party will fail, I said, closing the door in her face. But not because of me. I locked the door and leaned against it, shaking. I had told them the truth. I had given them the warning. A rational person would have canceled the party, come clean to their fiancé, and cut their losses. But my family wasn't rational. They were desperate. The next day, I saw the notification in the Halloway system. The deposit had been paid. A credit card authorization for $10,000. I clicked on the details. The card was in my father's name. He had likely drained his emergency fund or taken a cash advance. They were going through with it. They were going to spend money they didn't have to impress people who didn't have money, all to spite me. But the deposit was only the beginning. The contract clearly stated that the full balance, another $35,000, was due 48 hours before the event. If it wasn't paid, the doors didn't open. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that they didn't have $35,000. I called Logan. They paid the deposit. They're insane, Logan said. They're going to crash and burn, I said, and I'm going to have a front row seat. Do you still want to go? Logan asked. We don't have to be there. Oh, I'm going, I said, my voice cold. I have to be there. I'm the venue manager on duty for that night. Serenity. I need to see it, Logan. I need to see them realize that I'm not the safety net anymore. The date was set, the invitations were out, the trap was all I had to do was wait. The day of the party was October 14th, my wedding day. It was a crisp, perfect autumn afternoon. The leaves on the massive oaks surrounding Halloway Gardens had turned a vibrant, burning red. The air smelled of wood smoke and expensive perfume. I arrived at 3:00 p.m. wearing my standard black event coordinator suit, my hair pulled back in a severe bun. I wasn't the sister of the groom. I wasn't the almost bride. I was staff. I checked the system. The balance due was $35,400. It was unpaid. I walked into the ballroom. The florist was setting up the centerpieces, lavish displays of white hydrangeas and imported roses that cost a fortune. The lighting technicians were testing the uplights, bathing the room in a soft, flattering amber glow. Marco, the head of catering, approached me. He looked worried. Serenity, he said quietly. The balance, it's still red in the system. I know, I said, checking my clipboard. Protocol is clear, Marco. If the balance isn't cleared by 5:00 p.m., the doors don't open. But the guests arrive at 6:00, Marco said, glancing at the clock. Your mother called 3 times. She said the check is in the mail. She said to open the bar. Checks in the mail don't pay for Veuve Cliquot, I said. Hold the bar until I give the signal. At 5:15 p.m., my mother stormed in. She was wearing a gown that probably cost more than my first car. Caleb was trailing behind her in a rented tuxedo that didn't quite fit in the shoulders. "Where is the champagne tower?" Mom demanded, ignoring Marco and focusing her glare on me. "Why are the doors locked? The guests are arriving in 45 minutes." "The balance is outstanding," I said, holding up my tablet. $35,400, due yesterday. We gave you a grace period until 5:00 p.m. today. It is now 5:15. "We told you," Caleb shouted, his face flushing. "The check is coming. Dad is bringing it, just open the doors." "We don't accept personal checks for day of balances," I said calmly. "Certified funds or credit card only, and until payment is processed, the staff cannot serve alcohol or food." "You are doing this on purpose," Mom shrieked, grabbing my arm. "You want to humiliate us. Open the doors right now, or so help me God." "Let go of me," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Or I will have security escort you out for assaulting a staff member." She released me as if burned. At 5:45 p.m., the first guests began to trickle into the foyer. They were confused. The ballroom doors were locked. The bar was dark. Among them was Tiffany, looking radiant and oblivious in a white sequin dress. Her parents were with her, a tall, imposing man and a woman dripping in diamonds. "Patricia," Tiffany's mother called out, spotting my mother near the coat check. "Why are we standing in the hall? Is there a problem?" My mother froze. Caleb looked like he might vomit. "Just a minor technical issue with the lighting," Mom lied, forcing a smile that looked like a grimace. "We'll be in momentarily." I stepped forward. "Actually," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet foyer, "the issue is with the payment. The venue fee and catering balance have not been paid. As per Halloway policy, we cannot open the event until the balance is cleared." A hush fell over the crowd. Tiffany's smile vanished. Her father stepped forward. "Excuse me," he boomed. "Who are you?" "I'm the event director," I said, "and Caleb's sister. Unfortunately, the checks provided. Well, there were no checks provided." Tiffany turned to Caleb. "You said you paid for everything. You said your startup was funding this." Caleb stammered, his eyes darting around the room. It's a bank error, a wire transfer delay. I have the money, baby, I swear." "A wire transfer delay?" Tiffany's father scoffed. "For 30 grand? Son, if you don't have 30 grand liquid for your own engagement party, we have a problem." "We have it," Mom interjected desperately. "We just moved some assets around for the investment. You know how it is." "No," Tiffany's father said coldly. "I don't, because when I throw a party, I pay the bill." He turned to me. "What is the outstanding amount?" $35,400, I said. He pulled out a black American Express card. "Put it on this." My mother let out a breath she had been holding. Caleb sagged with relief. But I wasn't done. "I'm sorry, sir," I said, looking at the card. "I can't accept this. The contract is in Caleb Vance's name. Unless you are a co-signer, I cannot process a third-party payment without a notarized authorization form, which we don't have on file." "Make an exception," Mom hissed. "I can't," I said. "It's fraud prevention, company policy." Tiffany's father stared at me. Then he looked at Caleb, who was sweating through his shirt. Then he looked at his daughter. "Tiffany," he said quietly, "let's go." "Daddy," Tiffany whispered. "This family is a sham," he announced, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "They can't pay for a party. They lie about investments. They lie about assets. Come on." He took Tiffany's arm. She didn't resist. She looked at Caleb with a mixture of pity and disgust, then turned and walked out the door. "Tiffany, wait," Caleb yelled, running after them. The guests stood in awkward silence. My mother stood alone in the center of the foyer, her face a mask of absolute ruin. I looked at her. "I told you," I said softly. "The date was available, but you couldn't afford it." The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Caleb chased Tiffany's car halfway down the driveway before security stopped him. The guests, realizing there would be no party, awkwardly retrieved their coats and left in a stream of murmurs and judgmental glances. My mother sat on a bench in the foyer and wept, not for the loss of her son's happiness, but for the public humiliation she had just endured. I went back to my office, processed the cancellation fee, which would automatically go to collections against my father's credit, and closed the file. I walked out of Holloway Gardens that night feeling lighter than I had in years. I didn't go home, I went to the airport. Logan was waiting for me at the gate with 2 tickets to Fiji. We had used the money we saved from the canceled wedding to book a 3-week honeymoon. "Did you do it?" he asked as I approached, handing me a coffee. "I did it," I said, taking his hand. "It's over." We eloped on a beach 3 days later. It was just us, a local celebrant, and the sound of the ocean. I wore a simple white sundress I bought at the resort gift shop. It cost $50. It was perfect. When we returned, the wreckage of my family was still smoldering. Caleb's startup collapsed without the investment. He was forced to move back into my parents' basement. Tiffany blocked him on all social media and was reportedly dating a hedge fund manager 2 weeks later. My parents were furious, of course. They tried to guilt me, calling me cruel, vindictive, and heartless. They sent long, rambling emails about family loyalty and how I had destroyed their reputation. I didn't reply. I simply forwarded them the contact information for a debt consolidation service and blocked their emails. 6 months later, I received a letter from a lawyer. My parents were suing me for emotional distress and sabotage of business interests. I laughed. I sent the lawyer a copy of the contract, the text messages where they acknowledged the lack of discount, and the recording of the call where I explicitly stated the terms. The lawsuit was dropped within a week. I still see my family occasionally at funerals or distant relative weddings. We don't speak. They sit on one side of the aisle, looking bitter and aged, still whispering about how I ruined Caleb's big break. I sit on the other side, holding Logan's hand, watching the ceremony with a smile. I learned a valuable lesson that day at Holloway Gardens. You can't save people who are determined to drown, especially if they're trying to use you as a stepping stone to keep their heads above water. I didn't lose a family, I lost an anchor. And now, finally, I was free to sail.